let's start with this. So we reached out to Ann. Ann's delightful, by the way. And I said, hey, Ann, we want to do this interview with Angela. Is it even possible? And you were so quick in responding to say yes to this. Why? I don't know. I don't know why I was shocked by that. You've got a huge resume. I know you're still busy with a lot of board work and a lot of speaking and interviews like this, but why such a quick response?
Well, probably one of the things you don't know is that I am a protege is too big of a word, but I feel like Dr. Charles Stanley has mentored me for 42 years.
Wow. And
through him, I have met Andy, and he's inspired me, the last few years, et cetera. the funny thing is there's a lot of affiliations with Atlanta on a whole. So then when in your email, when you said Andy had mentioned and given you the contact information, then when you trust Clay, and I trust them. And if they think I should do this, then I'm all in. Wow. I'm not, those are, I don't need to think about that. They've been such a part of my life for so many years. So I'm honored to have this conversation.
Well, thank you ahead of time for doing it. I'm sure I'll say it a number of times, but we're really grateful. And you're such an inspiring person. I mean, I've heard you speak numerous times. I've listened to a number of podcasts. A couple of those I'm going to refer to in this interview. But maybe we could start with this. Can you tell us just a little bit about, you've been in some pretty important roles, some big roles, but faith seems like it has been a crucial part of your journey the whole time. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. One of 6 kids from very humble Midwestern beginnings. And I think therefore, it's a big competitive world out there. And so by nature, Clay, I think we're all really insecure. We all dream big, but and so for me, being raised with faith, and it was just such a part of my life. So whenever I would have those insecure feelings, I just went back to my faith, knowing that I wasn't in control, knowing that I wasn't alone. And I could lay in the backyard, I could go anywhere and say, I could dream, and then I could say, lead me, guide me, help me. And, and as I got older, I would pray for wisdom before I was going into board meetings or big speaking, no matter what, just, every morning I wake up grateful and thank you. Right? Thank you, I'm healthy. Thank you, I have a lovely husband. Thank you for keeping my kids safe. I just so incredibly grateful. And then as you have, big jobs, and we all have big pressures in our lives, and whether it's big jobs or little jobs, we all have a purpose. And Charles has taught me for 42 years as well that, your life is not your own. And, we're all here for a purpose, and everyone's purpose is as important as the next person's. What's yours? What are you called to do? And so my faith has just kept me, I hate to use the word confident because it's not confident, but it's helped me just realize that, I'm just this piece of the puzzle that's, and I want to be used. I'm not articulating it well. Sorry, it's early out here, but
no, that's fantastic. Hey, tell me about your parents. I hear you talk about them a lot and you refer to them a lot. I love how you, almost every interview I've heard you do, you talk about the humble beginnings that you had growing up as one of 6 kids in Indiana, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell us about what that was like.
Little farm town in Indiana.
A farm town. Well, take us back there.
Yeah.
Tell us about childhood.
Yeah, it's funny, the different generations and the different stories, but my father was an only child, and my mom actually was raised in an orphanage for 5 years until her father came back and got her. She has one sister. So I always say that when my parents came together, they dreamed of creating the family they never had, either one of them. So they had 6 kids in 7 years, and my mother celebrated everything. And our little church, we lived in this typical Midwestern neighborhood, and there was a church on each end of and every Sunday we'd walk to church and we'd walk home, and everything was centered around the church, right? The dinners, the lunches, the everything. And that's why I always say, it's not a box you tick. It is just a natural part of your life. You don't, it's just a part of my daily operating model. It's not, and that all came from my parents. There wasn't a morning my mom didn't come in and say, oh, thank God for this beautiful day. And before every meal, and to this day, when 55 people are over at the house for Christmas, everybody sings, they sing the prayers before. So I just, and it's funny, my father was more philosophical, definitely deeply spiritual, but my mother just shined her light and just believed that, through all of us. And so it was an amazing, and it made me realize again that when faith is just naturally thread through your life and through your children's life, again, it's not something that begins and ends. It's not something that I don't want to do that anymore. It's not a choice. I mean, you eat food and you pray and you read gospel to feed your soul. I mean, I don't know how to do it any other way.
I love that. At what point did you decide, all right, I'm going to leave Indiana? I mean, you lived in big cities, you've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, but you have this really unique way of staying in touch with the roots of where you came from, but yet you've experienced so much of the world. At what point of your life did you think, you know what, I'm going to see more than just this farm town?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a dreamer, and but I think that's because I've always had such a secure foundation, if you will. And I think when you have a secure foundation, whether it's in a family or whether it's in business, and that is a foundation that is just so connected through values and beliefs and behaviors that when you have that, again, it gives you a different, confidence is the wrong word, but it gives you a different peace, and so therefore the world was small to me, and I knew God would never give me more than I could handle. Now I would get insecure and I would say no and fight my fate. But when I finally gave in and things just fell into place, I'd be like, okay, we got this, we can do it. But I'd have to, it's funny. I never knew, I listened all those years, but I never knew when Dr. Charles Stanley and different people would talk about living in the spirit and living in the flesh. But it is a constant battle we all have because, we overthink things. When I got the call, moving to New York, or I got the call to move to London, and your first instinct is, I can't do that, and too much change, and I have a house and 3 kids and a husband, and how do I do this? And so you live in the flesh for a little while, and finally, when you confuse yourself so much, you get on your knees and lead me, guide me, and you realize that you're not alone. He would never give you more than you can handle. And then you start getting a peace, and you start looking out, and you start thinking of all the incredible positive things and the impact on your children's lives and how many other lives you could impact. And it's funny, you can never, an old Steve Jobs quote, you can never connect the dots looking forward, only when you look back. And I look back now, and all the global experience that was achieved at Burberry and all of the different, and for the kids, the kids are global citizens forevermore. And, but you don't know that going in. You just have to have blind faith and truly believe that it's all for a reason. It's all a part of his plan.
Well, that's, it's such an encouraging message for anybody watching today. And I love that simple idea that you can't connect the dots going forward. And I think that my guess is anybody watching today, that's going to give them a lot of hope that if they're in a situation that they don't love, or if they're in a situation where they can't make sense of it, you're not alone. One, Angela, you've been in situations where you couldn't either. But also there's a lot of hope in that the dots will connect, that they are going to connect. Can you take us back? This wasn't in the list of questions that I sent you, but can you humor us and tell us that story of when Tim Cook first called you? Were you a fan of Apple before that? I mean, you quoted Steve Jobs. Would you have quoted Steve Jobs when you were at Burberry?
Absolutely.
So you were already a fan.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Apple. I didn't know much about Steve's leadership style back then, but what I watched was how he with a very narrow focus, how he created this incredible brand. And it was pure and it was simple. So the ethos of what he was doing, I truly believed in. And I had read a lot of that and kind of had that as a little bit of my mission with Burberry as we were cleaning up and pulling things in, et cetera. So, and of course, it was one of the fastest growing companies in the world. It was impacting all of our lives. At Burberry was when the iPhone was launched and the iPad was launched. And so it was just the timing of all of it. And then I also felt that it was a bit of a gift. I mean, the fact that I was at Burberry a year, we finally had our strategies and these incredible devices were coming out, enabling us to jump on them and get ahead of our peers who were, doing things more the traditional way. I mean, I always thought it was just the most incredible timing, and we took full advantage of it. So So yeah, I used to tell investors that I thanked Apple because they were a huge part of the turnaround of Burberry.
So then a recruiter or a headhunter calls you, which I'm sure that would happen somewhat frequently. You were the CEO of Burberry, and then you get this one that says, "Hey, Apple's asked us to call you about a potential job." That it was as simple as that.
It was very simple as that. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. I have the greatest job in the world. And I finally have work-life balance. I finally, this happens every time, right? And it's weird for me. It's almost, I have this 7-year cycle. And right about that time, right when everything gets under control and you're starting to have peace, and all of a sudden, And so I did the human flesh thing. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. Very happy, et cetera. And that they called a couple of times, and then they ended up hiring another guy. So I was like, oh, fabulous, and just went back to focusing on Burberry and told investors we were going to double the business again over the next 5 years, and bought the beauty business back. I mean, we were on autopilot. We were just, it was the most united 11,000 people have ever been, and we were on a mission.
Wow.
And then that guy didn't work out, and 6 months later they let him go, et cetera. So then I get another phone call, and this time it was from someone inside of Apple, and would you consider it now? And I said, look, if anything, it's even worse now than it was before. Things are so good, and then of course it's the infamous, well, when you're in town over Christmas, would you just have a cup of coffee with Tim? And you don't want to feel disrespectful. You don't want to feel, he's an amazing man. And I said, look, I don't want to waste his time. I really am happy. But I went ahead and had the cup of coffee. And I was actually fascinated by the person because for the biggest job on the planet, or one of, he's a man of peace. And he was so calm and I was there to convince him that I was absolutely not the right person. So when he said, he starts telling me about it, and I said, look, Tim, really, you don't understand. I've used your technology to turn Burberry on, but I am not a techie. I hire really great engineers, but that's not what I am. I know enough questions to be dangerous. Well, I think we have enough of those. And I don't, last time I looked, I mean, that's, so we went through this, and it was funny because after the call, again, it's in your mind now. And then you start, I'd said no for a while, and I'd go back to my team and I'd get into my routine, but it was then in the back of your mind. And then I start to pray on it. Lord, is this what you want? Is this what you're calling me to do? Am I to take everything I've learned and am I to apply it on a scale 11 times bigger than what this is? And then you go through your insecurity phase, and then you go through your fear phase, and then finally you're like, okay, just lead me, guide me. If this is, and then a ton of other signs just kind of fell into place. And it's not always what you want to do. It's not what I wanted to do. I did not want to leave my children in London. They were in college. They'd already moved out. But it's not what I wanted to do. The house was finally done. I didn't want to sell our beautiful home we just finished. But you get into all of these very human things, and none of it I wanted to do, but you have to rise above it and say, if I'm here and I have truly given myself and I have prayed for you to use me, lead me, guide me, then it's not for me to choose when and so I told my husband, I said, I know it sounds strange, but I believe this is a calling. I believe that Burberry was actually a warm-up. That was a practice run, a dry run.
Wow.
And now maybe he wants me to apply a lot of the things we did there at Apple.
And you did some of the things that I've asked a number of people about this conversation today. I said, what is Angela best at? They talked about the digital transformation that happened while you were at Burberry, but they also talk about your value for human connection and your ability to create a culture of connectedness, which I want to ask you about that topic because I feel like it's especially relevant today. I mean, you have the experience of leading people that are spread all over the world, and then at Apple, even more so. You had how many thousands of employees? 70,000 employees in retail stores all over the world, but yet you you took those skills that you really honed at Burberry to create this sense of connectedness, which is what so many people are trying to figure out how to do now when, you know, we're in a world where you're not always seeing people face to face. So tell us what you believe about that, why that's so important to you, and then we'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the practical application of how you were able to do that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's this thing we call culture, you know, and then we called it connected culture. But, you know, a lot of people may not culture what's, you know,
Right.
And honestly, to me, it's more leadership, and it is uniting people. And I don't care if you're playing in an orchestra. I don't care if you're marching in the military. I don't care if you're a basketball team. It's everyone sharing the same values and the same belief and having the same hope and being united and not doing what's best for you, but always doing what's best for the greater good of the whole. And when you do that, then you build this incredible foundation of trust. And when humans naturally trust each other, their minds open up. They think creatively and to me, with each other, for each other. And that creates this incredible energy and this incredible momentum. And you start to have quick wins, and then you have more wins. And that old adage, success breeds success. And so it's this self-fulfilling group, this collective together, but it's not one. And that's why we said at Burberry, it is not about me. I am the connector. I am the enabler. And I'm going to keep looking ahead and guiding and pushing and shaping us. But I will know I've done a great job if I can exit stage left and the entire thing, that collective, still continues to soar.
I love that. Why was that so important to you, that human connectedness and that connected culture?
Well, I think, like I just said, I think that what I had learned in a lot of smaller companies, et cetera, and it's funny, what I had learned, and then also, you know, my own insecurities of never being a CEO before. Never, much less for a FTSE 100 company, you know, public in Europe, et cetera. So there was so much I didn't know. But what I did know, and whether that was from a big family, whether that was just my faith, what I did know is that if I treated everyone like I wanted to be treated, and if I explained to them our bigger mission and our bigger purpose, why it's so important we do this. And at Burberry, for example, you know, we were a federation of businesses, not all owned. There was very little connectedness, very little. And so we had to start it early on. And one of the things, in order to, you know, Simon Sinek says, start with why. And we didn't have a why other than sell more stuff. And so very early on, Christopher and I had a vision to create the Burberry Foundation. And the board agreed to put 1% of the profits into the Burberry Foundation. And our mission was children. We wanted to help education in children everywhere we lived and worked, just so everyone had an equal chance, et cetera. So a lot of our why was because the more successful the company was, the more money went into the Burberry Foundation and the more kids' lives we could touch and transform. Wow. So we always said, you know, we'll be measured, you know, how many lives can be touched and transformed by the power of our performance. That was our tagline. And so oh, guess what? And along the way, we would sell a lot more stuff. But it wasn't the vision and mission of, yes, we said we wanted to double the business in 5 years, et cetera. So we had these hard strategies for investors and analysts, but we had our soft strategies. And that was uniting us and connecting us and helping every community where we were, et cetera, et cetera. So it was this bigger mission, bigger purpose that we united everyone around. And to me, it's always worked. Any great company, you know, why is P&G? Why is Unilever? And when you look at, you know, when Paul Pullman was in situ or David Taylor at P&G, they've got the same. It's all bigger than any individual, and it's uniting the collective to make a bigger impact. And I think we've all had a great warm up until now. And I think, Clay, you know, with 3 times more people becoming destitute next year because of the pandemic, I think it's going to take every individual, every company, every community leader, everybody And if the problem's 3 times bigger, then we have to do 3 times more, 3 times faster.
Wow.
in order to help people. So, and again, I think that Burberry was a warm-up.
Yeah.
We applied a lot of those same things at Apple, and I firmly believe I'm going to be called again to do even more. I think these are all lessons we've learned along the way.
That's right. I love the way you see your life that way, that it really is, it's almost like life is this trampoline, and the next move is just a way to propel you higher to that experience that you gain, that it's for that next experience. That's a great way to view a career, that it's not, oh, I reached the peak because I was the CEO of Burberry and then I'm just kind of biding my time after that. I mean, you really, that's a great way to see life. I want to ask you real quick about the Burberry Foundation, because you brought that up and I love that concept. It's such an astounding, remarkable thing that you did there. What would you say to somebody who's maybe running a small business or even running a team in a larger business who's thinking, well, I don't have time to worry about the Burberry Foundation or whatever the foundation may be that would be an example of that, because that's a waste of time. I'm trying to grow the business. I'm trying to grow our profits. I'm trying to meet more clients. I'm trying to sell more. And all of that is just sideways energy. It's just a waste of time. What would you say to that?
Mm-hmm. I'd say that you'll never win. You'll do fine. No, but you'll do fine. But you will never have extraordinary results.
Wow.
And one of my favorite quotes is Jim Collins, the business guru, and he says, "So few people will have a great life because it's too easy to settle for a good life." Wow. So I argue you don't do anything. Wow. You don't unite people around another. And it doesn't have to be, Burberry was global. We played in 30 countries. A lot of small businesses aren't that way. My father ran a small business in Indianapolis. He never employed more than 25 people at a time. Okay, maybe 100 when they had the warehouse, et cetera. But right around you, probably within 5 miles, there's probably a food line at a local church right now. There's probably businesses that are struggling, that need help of some sort. And I think that if you got your team together and everyone talked about what could they do locally right there in the community, and whether you decided to match the volunteering hours, whether you decided to do donations and match their donations, how do you unite your small team? Again, 40 million Americans are out of work. Extreme poverty is going to go to 26% next year from 8%. So people are dying, struggling. I mean, it is a very challenging time. And so to me, I would challenge every business leader. It's your responsibility. It's a part of your work. And the fun thing is, if you do that, and if you engage your employees and they decide the 2 or 3 things that collectively they want to lean into, you watch how better your business results will be. You watch, because now it's bigger. Everyone's united behind a purpose with values, and revenue's the outcome. And so again, I said at Burberry, I said at Apple, every company needs their hard strategies. Those quantitative things that investors or banks or can measure. But you also have to have your soft strategies. And it's the soft strategies that will enable extraordinary results of the heart. Without the soft strategies, those things that unite, you will never have extraordinary results on the hard strategies. Just my humble opinion. and my experience. I mean,
you do say it with such great humility, but you've got such a strong track record of success, which is why it's so delightful listening to you, because I love that you call yourself a dreamer. I hear it in you. You have this, you just think so much bigger than yourself, or so much bigger than a company even. That's very, very inspiring. Hey, I wanted to ask you about, you were on the Masters of Scale podcast with Reid Hoffman, which for those of you watching, if you want to hear more from Angela, that interview was just terrific. But you shared there about about uniting and then aligning everyone around the why. You mentioned Simon Sinek there. He's been influential for a lot of us as well. But tell us, what did that actually look like? I feel like that's one of those things that you hear people talk about, but give us your background and experience as to what that means to unite and align everyone around the why.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it goes back to, like I said earlier, I worked in high school. I worked 2 jobs in college. I've worked my whole life. You know, I was the kid at home that you know, had the list on the refrigerator that you know, said, okay, Mom, I'll cut the side yard for $1 and the front yard for 50 cents, and I'll make the beds and change the sheets for $1. And I mean, every day I would have, you know, all of these. So a huge part of it is I've always worked. And I've had to work my way up from part-time retail, you know, no matter what, I've just always had, and I know, but along the way, I've had incredible leaders and incredible managers, but I've also had really bad ones, ones that broke my heart, ones that, you know, and you learn from all of them. And again, I think it's, looking back, it's all for a reason. If I'd only had good ones, what would I have learned? But what I did learn was, don't ever forget where you came from, because everybody starts somewhere. And so maybe they all want to know the same things I wanted to know when I was there. And you know, biblically they call it do unto others. And so it's why even at Apple Retail, I visited 140 stores and sat in the back room with 20, 30, 50 people at a time, asking, taking notes. And then we did the largest internal crowdsourcing exercise ever in a company. I brought in an outside amazing guy, Gary Hamill, in his management labs. And we crowdsourced for 6 months, asking every employee, what do you think Apple should be doing more of in your community? And because that was going to help inform our, so if I were in their position, I would want to be involved. I don't want a dictatorship. And I would argue the next generation, Clay, really wants to be heard.
I agree.
They grew up with social media. We didn't. They're used to being heard, liked, shared, you know, and we weren't. So how do we make sure, if everybody has a voice in this day and age, how do we make sure that their voice is being heard? Because if I were in their position, that's what I would want. So I just, at each step, you know, you take what you've learned and you just, you know, continue to use it, and you put the platforms and things in place. And we put some incredible digital platforms in place at Burberry so everybody could stay connected. And we did exactly the same thing at Apple. By the time I left, we had 3 incredible platforms, one for deep learning, one for daily inspiration and you know, what was happening that week. And then we also had one called Loop, so that every one of them were socially connected. It used auto translate, so everyone could talk to each other, even if they didn't use the language. But then that is a part of, that's creating a culture, that's connecting everybody. You know, and then again, Angela can slide out because it's not about Angela. This thing is so big and so strong that it'll continue. And then I can go on to my next calling.
Can you tell the story about the little videos you would send? Was it Monday morning that you would send here a couple things that I want you to, was it 3 points or?
Yeah, 3 thoughts in 3 minutes or less. And the only reason for that is the best YouTube videos that go viral were under 3 minutes at that point. So we had done, you know, some analysis, et cetera. And Christopher and I had done videos at Burberry when we put our Burberry, it was a Salesforce platform we put in place at Burberry. And so we would do weekly videos. Well, now there's, you know, and it really helped connect the teams, et cetera. So when I started at Apple, I waited a few months because I remembered an old quote my father used to always say, and it wasn't his, I forget who to attribute it to, but he used to always say, better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and relieve them of all doubt. So that haunted me my first few months at Apple, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I just was out there, and the more, I was just a sponge. I didn't know the acronyms. I didn't know the tech words. And so I waited until I felt like I could talk their language. And I understood the retail credo, and I understood the quotes from Steve that they lived on. And Steve would always say, you know, our job is to enrich lives, and you need to do it through the lens of education. He would tell the teams, you're not allowed to sell, but you are allowed to educate.
Wow.
And tell customers something they don't know.
Wow.
So I had to understand what the teams valued, what motivated them, what connected them and inspired them, because they were the greatest retail organization in the world, still are probably. And so far be it from me to come in, and I didn't create it, they created it. And so I waited and I listened, and then I felt very strongly, and Apple didn't know videos at that point in time. And then I called the head of PR one day and said, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to start doing them, and I'm going to start sharing with them and taking them on the journey, because it was very different than how things had ever been done in the past. They were very operationally focused, and we were really focused on building a new customer experience. Well, who knows the customer better than they do? So I wanted their input, and we knew, I didn't know exactly. We knew our mission was to enrich lives. We knew we were going to do it through the lens of education, and then I would ask, so are we doing that? And what do we mean? How do we define enriching a life? And do we measure it? So we just took the foundation and we just took it to another level and didn't walk away from it. And so that's what the videos did. And the videos just as you and I are talking, I would just, and I will tell you, had I not listened to Charles Stanley all those years, had Andy not inspired me, I don't know if I actually could have done them.
Wow.
Because it's not my medium, but I think it's also one of the reasons that they were a big part of my life.
Which I think there's so much to learn there for every one of us about people hearing your voice, people seeing your face, that's part of creating culture. And then you had a moment one day where your daughter calls while you're in the middle of recording one of them.
Oh yeah, my first one.
Oh, the first one.
The very first video. And I told the guy, I said, don't turn it off. Don't stop recording. And I picked it up and I said, Angelina, mommy's shooting a video. I'll call you right back. And I put the phone down and I just finished the video. And I told him, do not edit that out. Do not edit it out. And they're looking at me like, this is Apple. Everything's perfect. We don't. And it went out with that in there. And I woke up the next morning to like 1,500 emails from all over the world thanking me for taking my daughter's call.
Wow.
But also giving them permission to be good parents. It showed them my priorities. And that went a long way very early on to showing them who I am. I'm just like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm no different. I am a person. I am a parent. I am a daughter, a friend. I'm no different than you are. And if I take my daughter's calls, I expect you to take your daughter's calls, because above and beyond anything, those kids are our legacy.
Wow.
Long before the job.
Gosh, I love that. I also love how, I know you mentioned right at the very beginning that we all have insecurities, and you're absolutely right, we all do, but you have such a strong sense of foundation, or there's an anchor that I would assume faith plays a big part of that. I'd love to talk a little more, there's so many different areas we could talk about with your experience and the way you led, but I want to talk about the way your faith, the way it showed up on a daily basis. We've got a lot of people watching today that some of them have a faith that's a real meaningful part of their life, and then others of them are still trying to figure out whether they want their faith to be a big part of their life or not. How did you balance that? How did you balance working for one of the, being CEO of an incredibly influential brand, but also working at Apple, where I would imagine it's probably not the most, I wouldn't think it's the most welcoming place to faith. I don't know. Surely it's not hostile to faith. But how did you balance that?
I think that we all think because there's so many outspoken, strong people that are telling us, but again, God's called all of us to do it in the way that He wants us to do it. And I was raised, shine my light. I watched my mom shine her light. And Dr. Charles Stanley always said, you shine your light so brightly, they're going to be so curious why you are who you are. And they'll naturally want to go there with you. And so it is tricky in business, In London, we had 45 nationalities in our headquarters.
Wow.
We had a prayer room in the basement for a lot of our Middle Eastern employees and customers, et cetera. And so I honor and respect all religions. I choose this religion. God's put me in this position, but it's not for me to judge. It's not for me to, love, right? Love your neighbor. So I love, this is what I believe. And so I would read every morning for at least an hour. Even in London, I'd watch Dr. Charles Stanley every morning. I spoke at his 85th birthday party and I said, you don't realize everywhere in the world you've been with me.
Wow.
No matter where in the world, I would, I'd listen because I needed every morning. I needed his voice. I've always told him he's been the most brilliant messenger in my life all these years. And so I would have my own routine in the morning, and that would set me up then to be able to handle whatever the day would bring. But I would walk in with a smile from saying good morning to every receptionist. And I do believe whatever you give, you get tenfold in return. And that's not just financial. That is smiling. When you smile at someone and say good morning, they smile bigger back at you. And that energy they give to you, that fulfills me more. And so again, people are curious. Why is she happy? Why is she always so positive? Why is she always so upbeat? Where does she get her peace, right? And then sometimes they'd ask, and that would give me a wonderful opportunity then to share my faith and to share everything God's done in my life and incredible stories of signs that have played roles and it's led to some incredible long-term friendships and relationships. But I don't believe we're always called in business to have a bully pulpit or to, I think there's multiple ways. And sometimes those that profess too loudly, just live it.
Yeah.
Live it.
Did you find it, was it intimidating for you to roll into Apple, this new company that you held in such high regard? Was that an intimidating thing to walk in and try to figure out, navigate those waters of how do I live out my faith even here?
It's funny. I that was my perception. And literally the first week I started, one of the first emails I got was from the Apple Fellowship Christian Organization, of which there were thousands of members all over the world. And Apple allowed it. Apple let them use the theater, have speakers come in. And so I spoke to that organization with live streams and probably once a year while I was there. And Apple encourages it.
Yeah.
There's which again, I didn't think California, I didn't think Apple, but it's really interesting. I mean, you always, again, maybe none of us should ever listen to media again, but you come to California and I look at Rick Warren and John Ortberg and Dr. David Jeremiah, and
great churches
all
there.
of the incredible guys that line the coast of, but yet the perception is because of media but it's actually probably one of the strongest spirit-filled states that people just don't know.
Wow.
And therefore, the big organizations, they encourage it. I never, ever, and then you wouldn't believe the senior executives at Apple that we would do in-conversations at the Apple Christian Fellowship, at their big off-sites, et cetera. And big executives that spoke openly. And so and when Tim says everyone is welcome, he means it. Wow. They are truly the most inclusive company that I've ever seen.
Wow, that's remarkable. Hey, Angela, I thought this might be a good way for us to end this, but I feel like you mentioned you've got kids of your own. You've been a boss to thousands and thousands of employees. Would you talk for a minute? What did you say?
Partner. I don't like the word boss.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Which I love that concept, that you really see them as co-workers even. But would you, I'd love for you to end our conversation today by just talking to that person directly that maybe, and I'm sure you have had this conversation dozens of times, probably with your kids, probably with one of your partners that is coming in and saying, hey, I just don't know. I feel lost. I feel frustrated. I feel disappointed. You seem like you've got a great habit of talking yourself up even, of building yourself up. And I'm sure you've done it sitting across the table numerous times from people. So what do you tell that person that is just feeling discouraged today, or just feeling like, I don't know if I'm in the right spot, I can't see the dots in the future? What hope do you bring them, and what encouragement would you give to them in a moment like this even?
I'd say two big things really come to mind. One is, when is the last time you prayed? And, I prayed before we went on this call and said, let the Spirit speak through me. Please lead me, guide me, make sure that I say something that resonates and helps whoever's listening, right? Because again, it's not about me. I'm being used, and I'm allowing myself to be used. So who are you? When was the last time you prayed? And are you incredible? And I believe in praying forward too. I mean, if I ever get afraid, or I'm afraid for my children, or anything, I pray forward. Thank you for getting us home safely. Thank you during the lockdown in London for keeping my kids really safe. Thank you right? And so are you praying forward? Are you being thankful for what you want to happen? Grateful. But are you also every day, are you asking for guidance? Are you asking? Are you just pausing? Everybody's so busy. What's more important than asking the greatest force in the world what you're supposed to do? And when you ask, ask and it shall be given. So ask, and that doesn't mean once and go back to watching TV. That means every day. Ask, what do you want me to do? What do you want to use me for? How can I help? And everybody may not be a CEO. I never thought I would be a CEO. I never dreamed of being a CEO, ever. You may be a teacher. You may be you may be homeschooling your children. And what is more important than that? And so to me, but you might be down, but that might be your calling. And are you doing that as brilliantly and as wonderfully and as great as you possibly can? Because they need you. They don't have anybody else. And so I think sometimes, like, don't look at me. I just allowed myself to be used. But I know that I know there are millions and millions, and everyone's in a very different situation right now. So I would say you got to keep praying. You got to just 24/7. And I walk down the hall, I look outside. Thank you. Help me, lead me, guide me. And when I do that, I don't feel alone. I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel like, I've always said, I got a bigger boss. That's the only time I use the word boss. I got a bigger boss, and he has bigger plans for my life. And he's gonna use my gifts. So to me, that's one. The second thing is, I would read. There are so many. I am rereading right now Charles Stanley's The Will of God. Read it once, underlined it. I'm reading it again because it's so rich, and it helps me look beyond my current situation. I'm also reading Dr. Jeremiah's book called Forward right now, which is incredible about moving forward and looking ahead regardless of what age you are. So I would also encourage you to read. I listened to an amazing woman do 5 different sessions of prayer, teaching you how to pray. So there, you can watch anything. You can Netflix, but you choose what to read. You choose what to listen to. You choose what to fill your mind with. So I would say pray, read, or listen. There's so many incredible podcasts and things out there. But it's up to you. It's your choice. And he's there for you. Like, he's got you. But you have to ask. And you have to be loyal. And you have to, it's not a box you tick. Not something you just, I gotta do that. No. Make him your best friend. Make him your best friend, and he's always there with you. And just know that, and it gives me tremendous peace.
Angela, you've helped a lot of people today, and you've encouraged a lot of people today, and I know you have for your life as well. So thank you. Thank you for being a leader that we can look up to. Thank you for being so willing to talk about your faith. Thanks for being the kind of leader that that you had the hard strategies as well, and not just the soft strategies. You're really remarkable and inspirational, and I just can't thank you enough for this time.